In Pit Lane, proudly brought to you by Online Invent, websites, digital marketing, and custom software.
Hello everybody and welcome to a special live online exclusive edition of In Pit Lane. Yes, coming up this week on the program is, look, we're not on Channel 31 this week. I mean, there's something called Easter coming up, and for reasons that I don't understand fully, they're committing their time on Thursday night in our usual time slot to something called religion. So, but we're a religion. I mean, if motorsport is not a religion, and boy, did we celebrate at the Temple on the weekend. Yes, the Australian Grand Prix, a huge success. We'll be talking a little bit about that. But everyone's got Grand Prix fever, including my regular co-host, Craig Doc Ladigo, because he's not with us tonight. But coming off the full course yellow bench is Dave Stillwell. Dave, welcome to In Pit Lane.
Well, thanks for having me back. It's great to be in the super sub position. G'day to everyone out there. Looking forward to catching up on what's been an incredible week for motorsport in Australia.
It has been. It's incredible. And of course, Formula One and Grand Prix racing is the very pinnacle of the sport. I mean, you can't really get any higher than that. But of course, that's something that involves millions and millions and millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, as you know. But if you were sort of caught up in the fever on the weekend and you were thinking, gee, I'd really love to go racing, but I simply can't afford it, we might have some good news for you, because coming up, our guest tonight online from the wilds of Gippsland is Lee Unsworth from Motor Events Racing, and he's going to tell us all about an affordable way to go endurance racing, and he's coming up a little bit later on in the program as well. But right now, as Dave was saying, a lot to get through. Let's check out just some of it with the In Pit Lane Motorsport News. Well, Max Verstappen won the Australian Grand Prix with a comfortable win against Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Starting from pole, Verstappen lost the lead to George Russell early on, but quickly regained it and showed impressive race pace throughout. The race was interrupted multiple times with 3 red flag stoppages and ended with a chaotic restart, which saw 6 cars involved in incidents. Verstappen's victory is his 37th career win, but his first in Australia, while Red Bull celebrated their 350th Grand Prix win, breaking a drought in Australia that dates back to 2011. Verstappen now leads the World Championship by 15 points from teammate Sergio Perez. Local driver Oscar Piastri scored his first Formula One points, finishing the race in 8th position. Well, the Australian Grand Prix Corporation is under investigation after fans broke through security and accessed the Albert Park track during the race. The steward's report stated that security measures were not enforced, creating an unsafe environment for spectators, drivers and officials. During the chaos caused by the late red flags, some fans climbed safety fences and squeezed their way through barriers to get closer to the cars. The Grand Prix Corporation is reviewing security footage to understand how the breach occurred. Stewards found the corporation in breach of the 2023 FIA International Sporting Code and have required them to present a formal remediation plan to address these serious concerns. The Grand Prix Corporation have requested until June the 30th to fully respond to the situation. Unfortunately, it could mean the days of the traditional after-race crowd invasion, a popular part of the weekend, may soon be over. Well, supercars are seeking a new deal to continue at the Australian Grand Prix, despite being relegated to a lower support category status on the weekend. The 4-race Melbourne Super Sprint was the last in the current agreement, although an option does exist to renew for the next 2 years. Supercars Chief Executive Shane Howard has declared that returning to Albert Park as a championship round next year and beyond is looking good, despite the class being downgraded to accommodate the official F1 feeder series, Formula 2 and Formula 3. Most supercar team bosses support staying on at the Grand Prix undercard, citing international exposure and sponsor engagement at the glamour event. It was a tough weekend for the Aussie contingent in the open wheel support categories. In Formula 2, Jack Doohan had a strong recovery in the feature race, finishing in 8th place after starting from P15. Doohan's consistency was rewarded as several drivers ahead of him had major incidents, pushing him up the field. He now sits on 24 points, 34 points behind championship leader and feature race winner Ayumu Iwasa. And in the Formula 3 Championship, it was Christian Mansell who was the only Australian driver to score points. He picked up 1 point in the feature race thanks to a penalty handed to Dino Begonovic. Tommy Smith also benefited from Begonovic's collision, finishing in 12th place after starting 28th. Unfortunately, it was a tough weekend for our recent in-pit lane guest, Hugh Barter, who finished 15th after being caught up in a number of incidents in both races. Well, while we and a good part of the world was focusing on Albert Park, there were other races happening in other places around the world. Let's just take a look at a few of them with this week's In Pit Lane International Wrap.
Joseph Newgarden won his second consecutive Texas 375 in a thrilling IndyCar Series race on the high-banked Texas Oval. Newgarden led for 123 laps and passed McLaren team driver Pato O'Ward for the lead on the last lap. Romain Grosjean's crash triggered the last caution, ending the race under yellow. O'Ward finished second, taking the championship lead by 7 points over Marcus Ericsson. Alex Palou finished third. Scott McLaughlin had a tough race, but recovered to finish in 6th place. In MotoGP, Marco Bezzecchi rode to his maiden victory at the MotoGP of Argentina. Despite persistent rain throughout the day, Bezzecchi took an early lead and was never threatened. His victory now puts him 9 points ahead in the early battle for this year's championship. The race saw an all-satellite Ducati top three, with Johan Zarco taking second place and Alex Marquez finishing third. Franco Bagnaia, who was leading the championship going into this race, crashed out of second place late in the race. In other incidents, Brad Binder crashed out early, leaving KTM teammate Australian Jack Miller to take 6th place.
It is nearly criminal.
In a rematch of last year's Top Fuel final round of the NHRA Winter Nationals, Justin Ashley picked up his second straight win at the event, powering past Austin Prock on Sunday at Pomona. It gives the Top Fuel points leader his second straight victory and 9th career win. Matt Hagan jumped back into the Funny Car Championship points lead with his second win in 3 races to defeat defending world champ Ron Capps. In a final round matchup of 2 KB Titan racing cars, Dallas Glenn drove to his 4th career win and first for this season in his Camaro, beating Matt Hartford to win in Pro Stock. The win gives Glenn the Pro Stock lead and also marks the 3rd different Pro Stock winner in as many races. In NASCAR Cup Series action over the weekend, Kyle Larson earned his first victory of the season at Richmond Raceway. Larson took the lead late in the race and held off teammate Josh Berry from Hendrick Motorsports to take the checkered flag. Berry, filling in for an injured Chase Elliott, scored his best result in his short NASCAR Cup career, finishing in 2nd place. Ross Chastain finished 3rd on the podium, with Christopher Bell and Kevin Harvick rounding out the top 5.
And we'll have more news, not next week, because next week we have a special edition on Channel 31, Thursday night in our usual time slot. We will have a special edition of In Pit Lane featuring the 2023 Phillip Island Historic Festival of Motorsport, all those fabulous Formula 1 cars that came across. We're going to talk to some of the people who brought them across, the people who drive them, and give you a close-up look at some of those cars. That's next week, the Thursday after Easter on Channel 31 at the usual time of 9 p.m. But right now we're going to take a break, and when we come back we're going to be joined online by our special guest. That's Lee Unsworth from Motor Events Racing. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Get the phone ringing for your business with website development and SEO services from Online Invent. Visit onlineinvent.com.au.
Yes, if you're tired of having your business being buried away on page 24 of Google search results, look no further than our friends at Online Invent. They're the local experts in SEO, web design and software development. Online Invent knows how to make your website and social media profile stand out and get noticed by potential customers. Online event boss Roy Eller is a huge supporter of local motorsport. He even sponsors us here on In Pit Lane on Channel 31 Melbourne. So not only will you be getting top-notch service, but you'll also be supporting a company that cares about our community, not just the motorsport community, but the broader community as well. Don't settle for being invisible online. Contact Online Invent today. And once again, we say thank you to Online Invent for their ongoing support of In Pit Lane, RMI TV and community television. Well, our guest tonight is sort of at the other end of the Grand Prix Corporation and the whole sort of Grand Prix scene. It's sort of grassroots motorsport, the old-fashioned way. And well, Dave, you've been involved in grassroots motorsport for a long time, but this is even sort of a more affordable level than say the State Series or even lap sprints and that sort of thing.
Definitely, this is a way for often a group of friends who've spent a lot of time bench racing to make that step and put the beers to one side for a few weekends, put a car together at very low cost with all the safety equipment and move into a motorsport environment that's welcoming of people without a huge range of experience to let them get as much track time as possible for the smallest entry cost. And having participated in some of the precursors to motor events racing, I can say it's a lot of fun. You meet a huge range of people from all walks of life and all levels of engagement with the sport. You might pick up some people that have been got involved in the sport through being fans of Drive to Survive, or maybe they're lifelong fans of the sport, have just never thought, I couldn't see myself doing that. I might need a little bit more, few more funds in the back to be able to do that. Let's
find out all about the events and if the technology is all working. Joining us online now is Lee Unsworth from Motor Events Racing. Lee, welcome to In Pit Lane.
Thanks, Brett and Dave. And Dave, you've nailed it in your introduction. Absolutely perfect.
So tell us about sort of the basics of where it came from. I mean, what was the genesis of Motor Events Racing? How did it start and what does it do?
Okay, philosophically, anybody who's been in motorsport understands one of the biggest problems with motorsport is cost. And the cost is not just the physical cost of buying a car and running a car, it's the cost when it gets damaged. And also the other issue that's becoming more and more evident is seat time. And I could tell you 30 years ago when I was a young man, it was $2,500 for 90 minutes track time running in the bottom of the feeder groups in the HQs. Nowadays, with Motor Events Racing, on average, $1,000 to $1,200, you'll get 6 hours if you're a driver of a team on the track for a weekend. And to me, that's a lot of fun. It takes out the stress, it takes out the issues.
Yeah, that's the thing about this series, isn't it? These are endurance races. So as Dave was saying before, you can get together with a whole bunch of mates, pool your resources and go racing, and everybody gets some, a decent go of some seat time.
One of the wonderful things that I've learned about endurance racing, because I come from a sprint race background, is it has all the facets of racing. You have strategy, you have fuel stops, you have tyre management, you have brake management, you have car management. And it's not go out there, go as hard as you can for 4 or 5 laps and become a hero. You actually have to use your brain, and counselling young drivers on being sympathetic to the mechanics. Craig Lowndes, great sympathetic. Peter Brock, very easy on his car. Alan Jones, really hard. We understand, you learn about looking after the car, and it gives you all that. And your pit crew gets involved because they've got a planned strategy. Fuel stops during yellows and reds. I think it's the whole pavlova. You've got everything. You got the strawberries. You got the lot.
So, Dave, I mean, what do you think about it? I mean, have you got any questions for Lee?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that it's really good at saving the competitors from themselves. There's so many categories that the rule book, nothing's more expensive than control racing. We're seeing Hyundai Excel race cars changing hands on our motorsport classified sites for upwards of $30,000 to $35,000. And when you consider that's a car, the road car was able to be picked up for less than $500 just a few years ago. The events that Motor Events Racing put together, where the red book value for the car is no more than $5,000 as a used example, and then of course the rule book is there to save the competitors from themselves. You can do all the fancy upgrades to your car if you feel so inclined, but that just moves you out of the competitive range of the car that you start with and moves you into the outlaw class. Whereas, if you look after the car, you put tyres that will last a really long time on it, maybe a set of Bob Jane all around us.
He's a plug machine. He really is. He's a plug machine.
As I said, a huge shout out to all the companies that support motorsport. But again, you don't have to go and put 8-way adjustable remote canister dampers on the car. You can put a good set of sport shocks and lowering springs in the car. Put good pads and rotors. You don't have to have the 6-piston monoblock everything on the car.
So Lee, what are the regulations? I mean, just simply, what are the regulations for people sitting at home saying, "Oh, yeah, that sounds interesting." What can you do? I mean, you go out, you find the car that you think is suitable for under $5,000. What can you do to that car?
Okay, to give you the classic example, I started in this series when my son was 16, who was a keyboard racer. So we paid $1,000 for a wrecked car from an auction, a BMW 318, and built it up. First time we took it out, it was a dog. Then we start adding some tyres. We start putting coilovers on it. We put some extractors on it. We might put a quaif diff in it. And you build the car, but then with somebody like my son, who was only 16 and he's now 23 or 25 and he's faster than me on every track, he'd learnt how the car improved as he grew with the car and modified it. Dad, it's understeering. Okay, so we soften off the sway bar. And this is where this event, with so much seat time, instead of doing 5 or 6 laps and coming back and going, I'm not actually sure what the car's doing, you put your son or your child or your friend or whatever in the car, they get 90 minutes running around and feedback, and then you alter the car and they learn. So at the end of a year, they get 18 or 20 hours seat time, which would normally take them 3 or 4 years in a normal class. So as a development series and a learning series, it's multifaceted. And that's one of the things I'm quite passionate about this series.
So where are these races taking place? You had a recent event at Sydney Motorsport Park, but where most of our viewers are coming from Victoria. I mean, where do you race here in Victoria?
So we go everywhere that the V8 supercars go, except for Bathurst. So we run Winton, which is a great technical track. We run Sandown this year for the first time. We've run Phillip Island for the last 2 years. We run the Bend. We've just come back from Sydney Motorsport Park. We run Morgan Park. We'll be one of the very first events at the new Townsville track. This is not an embarrassing or, we're the bottom of the feeder group. This is a very serious series with 13 events. Last year we ran 16. There's only one other a series out there that runs more than 14 events a year, V8 supercars. So we run everywhere, and we will be back at Wakefield as soon as that reopens.
So how do people find out more about it? Where do they go? If we've got people watching right now and they say, yeah, okay, I like the sound of that. How do they find out more about it? Where do they go? Who do they contact? Okay,
there's 2 main things. Firstly is the website, which is motorevents.com.au. Secondly, the 4 of us that run it, one in every state, this is not our business. This is our hobby. We're doing it because we love motorsport and this end of the thing. Phone us. We are not stuck in regulations. We're approachable people. Somebody rings me up and tells me that they're looking at a BMW. I'll tell them all the things that I found that caught me out. Now, don't cut any wires unless you know what they are. So phone us. We're on the website. Our personal phone numbers are there.
Well, it certainly sounds like a fun way to go. I mean, there's a few of these things going around at the moment. I mean, Tampered Motorsports do them as well. There's a whole bunch of there. I think it is, obviously filling that need that people people really have sort of looked out and said, like we'd love to go racing, but we simply can't afford it. Not even at the club level, not even at the lap sprint level. We just want to get out and we want to have fun and we want to get together and go motor racing, just like the good old days. For reasons of having fun and also for learning, as you say, for the next generation. Lee, thanks for joining us tonight. As you were saying, people can go to the Motor Events Racing website or the Facebook page. That's how I got in touch with Lee. But for now, best of luck. Now, first of all, when is your next race meeting in Victoria?
We've got Winton 2-day rain, 24 hours at Winton in June. And then we're in Sandown.
That'll be nice and cold. That'll be nice and cold.
Oh, mate, well, you've got to learn how to drive in the wet. Max Verstappen's father took him out every time it rained in the go-kart. So you've got to race in all conditions. It makes you a better driver.
Well, good luck with it. It's a great thing to get involved with. But for now, Lee Unsworth and Motor Events Racing, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
Brett and Dave, thank you very much for supporting motorsport.
And thank you, as I said, to Lee. Now, when we come back after this very quick break, we're going to be talking about basically what's happened on the weekend. We're also going to be talking about what's coming up because there's just so much happening. We've got the Bathurst 6 Hour coming up this weekend as well. We've also got coming up, we've got the state rounds. We've got all sorts of things. So stay tuned. You're watching In Pit Lane exclusively live tonight on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel and the In Pit Lane Facebook page. Don't go away. We will be right back. And okay, if you're watching right now, you've obviously got an interest in motorsport. Now, if you're a company or you've got a team or a business involved in motorsport, you want to obviously reach motorsport people. Well, sponsoring In Pit Lane on Channel 31 and online isn't just a great way to support your local motorsport community, but it's also a very smart business decision. By sponsoring In Pit Lane, you reach a dedicated audience of hardcore motorsport enthusiasts and fans. Not only are you able to promote your brand to this engaged audience, but you'll also be supporting the training and development of young people in the TV and media production industry via RMI TV student television. With the combination of motorsport news, interviews, action, along with live local music, In Pit Lane is a unique opportunity for you to connect with your target audience in a fun and engaging way. With a loyal fan base and a proven track record of over 26 years, In Pit Lane's a great way to get your product noticed and build brand awareness in the local community. Sponsoring In Pit Lane's a win-win situation. You're supporting the development of young people in the media industry, like the people we have around on the cameras and in the studio tonight, and you're also promoting your brand, services and products to a hardcore motorsport audience, your customers. So for more information on sponsoring In Pit Lane, just contact us at advertise@inpitlane.com. That's advertise@inpitlane.com. Well, it was a huge weekend of motorsport locally, and of course coming up, as I said, coming up this weekend for Easter, we've got the Bathurst 6 Hour. Dave, you were basically set in for the whole period of time at the Grand Prix. I mean, just having a look at it, we saw the crowds. Clearly, I've never seen a crowd that big. Even on the Friday, the place was packed.
The place was packed from Thursday. I mean, trying to go and buy, a pack of hot donuts on the Thursday morning was next to impossible. Just so difficult to find space to move. David Corrigan, the manager of motorsport for the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, came and addressed the Motorsport Australia officials at the end of the weekend and said, not only did we set a new record for this event, over 444,000, it's actually a new record for Formula One globally. We beat the record at Austin, 444,631. So to all of you that came and attended the event, thank you so much. You helped make it quite possibly the best Australian Grand Prix yet.
I think what really impressed me about the day, as I said, only went on the Friday, but even though there was such a huge crowd there, I was really impressed that there was a lot more sort of facilities. I wasn't in any particularly long queues. I mean, okay, apart from jumping on the tram and getting out of the place. But and people are complaining about that. But let's face it. I mean, if you're going to have any event that's going to have over 100,000 people, and there's only really one or two sort of routes in and out of the place, you're going to have some problems, and it's called patience, people. You just got to have something.
Absolutely. I mean, the event is well integrated. I mean, the fact that it's all contained within that one single park precinct, there's basically no other event like it anywhere on the motorsport calendar. There's plenty of parklands, there's space for people to work out. There's plenty of car club displays, including the Garagistic B&W Drivers Cup, along with many other car clubs strewn across the golf course. There's entertainment for the kids. There's all sorts of corporate facilities. What really impressed me is that a lot of the feedback from the fans and the paying spectators from last year's event, which of course was the first year back after we had that COVID interrupted 2020 event, they took all that feedback on board and they were asking for it on GPTV. There was so many more food vendors, so many more toilets. A lot of our officials around the circuit are often in places that are a bit no man's land as far as, when you've got a little bit of downtime, if you want to grab a nice coffee and something to eat. You often, previously years, didn't have that option. This year, almost everyone could go and within short walking distance, when there's a bit of downtime, find, a provider of caffeinated beverages.
Yeah, and unfortunately, apart from caffeinated beverages, I mean, unfortunately, the one thing you couldn't get was a beer. They had something called Heineken, which is a little bit like a beer, but that was all you could get. So if you were looking for beer, I'm sorry, you were out of luck. But you could have a Heineken, or you could. I actually found a cocktail bar. There was a cocktail bar, and I had a couple of quite reasonable and, believe it or not, reasonably priced cocktails as well. That was the thing that got me this year. I mean, yes, there were so many of those food trucks and so many of those things around. You had sort of, like a huge variety of different foods. So it was like going to the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival for a start, but they had managed to keep it a little bit more affordable than has been in the past. I think they've sort of realised that things were tough this year, and they really said, let's not get silly about this. So it wasn't a bad day. It wasn't really a bad day out, and I had no shortage of food and a couple of drinks.
Absolutely. I mean, in the short periods of time I was able to step away from my official role in the event, the wide variety of vendors and also the promotional activities from all the brands, even though they're not, connected with any of the cars racing on circuit, you had a really great display from Toyota Gazoo Racing with the brand new Toyota 86 Racing Series car that's coming out next year. And then, of course, all the brands that are engaged in the event. We had the debut of the Ford Mustang Mach-E, GM Special Vehicles were there with the new Silverado, and, of course, the Chevrolet Corvette, the Z06. And of course the Porsche Zero Emissions, Porsche with an amazing display of their new cars, including the full electric Taycan. There's something for everyone at the event. And if you need somewhere quiet to chill out, there's plenty of spaces. You can chill on a beanbag and watch the race unfold, listening to the commentary from our good friends. Cameron Vanden Dungen and Greg Rust joined in the commentary box by some experts.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a really good day out. And congratulations to Andrew and David and all of the people involved in running the Grand Prix. We had them in a couple of weeks ago, and well done. Congratulations to Andrew Westcott. We said it on the time. I think he's done a very fine job over the past few years. Now, coming up this weekend, of course, we've got another major event coming up, the Bathurst 6 Hours. Now, that's an event that you're sort of really interested in. I mean, there'll be some BMWs there. They will be a very, very, very good chance of winning. For people who haven't seen it, explain the Bathurst 6 Hours.
Well, this is really Bathurst endurance racing like it used to be. It's production cars, so they roll out of the showroom, they take the interior out, put a good set of springs and shocks in, a good set of brake calipers and brake discs on it, no aerodynamic work, a set of lightweight wheels, and a couple of small performance modifications. But realistically, these are the cars that you can buy almost straight out of the showroom with teams running. There's some professional teams running cars, but also a bit like we see with the motor events racing, a group of very plucky amateurs coming together for a weekend. Ma and Pa teams. Where there's someone in the family takes care of the catering, someone takes care of the wheel washing, someone's on the strategy, someone's listening to Race Management Channel. They're really grassroots privateer efforts.
And there's a lot of the supercar guys again. I saw Thomas Randall's announced that he's driving one of the BMWs. He's going there. Chaz Mostert is racing there. There's Marcus Ambrose, as we mentioned last week's show, will be there. So that's coming up this week. Now, if you can't get up to Bathurst, unfortunately, no free-to-air coverage. It is, however, on Stan Sport. So if for the 25 people who actually have Stan Sport, you can watch it on Stan Sport. But it should be a good weekend. Now, speaking of Bathurst, it's not of course, Bathurst is famous for the 1,000. It's famous for the 6 hours. It's also increasingly famous for the Bathurst 12 hours. The Grand Prix is the only major international motorsport event in Australia. The Bathurst 12 hours has made a huge comeback this year after the problems of the pandemic. And unfortunately, I couldn't get up there, but Doc was up there. And while he was up there, Doc, I mean, he's always trying to make friends. And one of them was British journalist David Lloyd from the publication Sports Car 365. So here's Doc at the Bathurst 12 hours.
Where does the Bathurst 12 hours sit in the worldwide sports car scene?
It sits highly. It's really popular with international teams, European teams. When you talk to a team principal or a driver about competing at Bathurst, they'll always have a little twinkle in their eye, I think, when they think of Mount Panorama. Obviously the entry count isn't quite where it was in previous years,
But it's going to grow.
Exactly. We're used to seeing sort of 20 plus pro cars, and for obvious reasons, COVID related. Things took a bit of a back step the last couple of years, but we're back to a pro class this year, and I think just the race in general, there's a real allure about racing at the mounting in an endurance format with these great GT3 cars. It's such a special event, and also, the fans are so knowledgeable about it as well. When you come down here, like, you really feel like
we like to think we're aficionados anyway. Thanks for having that. Well, you've just touched on as well the international infrastructure coming back to Australia. There's a lot of also manufacturers that are stepping up their game in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
They have some goals as well though too outside Australia, but obviously they'll might aim an arrow down here as well though too. The Ferrari, and BMW stepping up and coming over here with the VR team this year. Do you see that they might try and make their way? They'll put it on their bucket list and tick this one off over here as well?
I think so, yeah. There are lots of new cars coming into the GT3 scene. You mentioned the Ferrari 296 GT3. We've also got the new Ford Mustang GT3 coming next year, the Chevrolet Corvette Z06 GT3R, which is coming, but those won't be eligible, the Corvette and the Ford won't be eligible for Bathurst next year, but certainly, hopefully some Ferrari teams will be wanting to come and put that 296 on the mountain. I think it would look great, especially in a red livery around here. There's certainly a lot of movement in the GT3 scene, and I think that's only a good thing. For this event, that people will want to come back here as travel eases and it gets a bit easier to send cars over here.
We won't keep you too much long, but two quick questions.
Yep.
One, obviously, as I said at the start of the interview, you're a worldwide traveller, and you can compare. You've got something to compare it to as well, though, too. What do you think maybe possibly could be improved? If any little bugs or whistles around the place it could improved, or
We could get rid of a couple of those clouds. I think, otherwise...
You've been up the top of the mountain, have you?
I did last year when we had the winter edition, and that was sort of quite unique going up into the clouds.
So you know what the undulation's like now?
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. I'm going to aim to go up at some point this weekend in slightly sunnier climes, but no, I don't think I'd want to offer any words of improvement for the event. I think the Supercars organisation is so professional, all the way from top level through to media and things like that, and fan interaction. It's just great, and it's sort of I suppose at some European races we don't get this sort of level to a degree.
Support, yeah.
I think sort of the one of the things I noticed was the walk of manufacturers' cars, like road cars, on the way in and that sort of thing.
And the track from town.
Yeah. With the manufacturer engagement, that's something that you see a lot in IMSA in North America. It seems to be such a huge thing for the Australian motorsport market, perhaps less so in Europe compared to here. So I think it's really impressive. And yeah, the time to track was cool as well. I don't know if you were down there for that.
No, missed it by that much.
It never gets old seeing GT3 cars on the road. I must say.
It doesn't. I heard there was a few smokies in the bushes as well, though, too, enjoying the sights as well. We call that's the police over here. But obviously they didn't. No booking. It was all licensed signs and escorts. One last thing, Daniel. Won't keep you much longer. It's absolutely brilliant to have you guys here, and it's fantastic, especially on the international front. As you said, it's all back in. If someone asked you overseas, and you mentioned the Bathurst 12 hour either way, what would you say to them? What represents this place and this event?
Oh, it's hard to say.
What would you give it the highlight? Why would you say come here and do it?
I mean, there are so many things. To me, it's the circuit and the atmosphere. Those are the two things that go together to make this such a great event.
Yep.
GT3 racing is a platform that's successful worldwide, and I think it's good in all of the markets it races in. But when you combine it with the circuit and the atmosphere, it creates one of the best GT3 races in the world. And so I think that's a good enough reason for anyone to come here. The promise of this great category having sort of one of its greatest events. I think that's
sold.
Yeah,
it's sold me, and I live here anyway. So yeah, exactly. Daniel Lloyd, Sports Car 365. It's absolutely brilliant, a privilege and an honour to actually join you and have a chat with you here at the Bathurst 12 Hour 2023. You've been watching in pit lane, and we're having a ball here as well, though, too.
Yes, and that was, of course, Daniel Lloyd from Sports Car 365. I was thinking of David Lloyd, the English cricketer, so there you go. I mean, I've got so many sports happening between cricket, motor racing and professional wrestling. I mean, I've had an overload the last couple of days. Now, we've talked about sports car racing. That's something that you've been heavily involved with as well. The Victorian Sports Car Championship, no longer a part of the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championships, the camps. But there is a meeting coming up. Tell us what's happened there and what we're going to see and where we can see it.
Well, I'll have to do a wardrobe change for that first, so let me just...
You are wearing
a man of many hats, so I'll put this hat on for the moment. There we go. So, of course, the Victorian Sports Car Championship, of course, the Evolve Technic, so thanks to Christian Fitzgerald and his team at Evolve Technic for coming on board as the title sponsor for the series, alongside, of course, Kalis Kenny Intellect's Sven.
Boy, I'm glad we're not on Channel 31 tonight, because we wouldn't be on Channel 31 next week, that's for sure.
But look, it's a place for people to bring in. We've opened up the eligibility criteria so that it tackles basically all the GT3, GT4 vehicles, the GT3 Cup, the Trophy, the 1-make classes, the Ferrari Challenge, Lamborghini Super Trofeo, the Motorsport Australia 2B and 2F logbook cars, and including invited endurance specials. So we had our opening event at Phillip Island. Once again, thanks to Phillip Island Racing Club for having us on board. We had a bevy of Porsche Cup cars, a couple of Cayman GT4s, one of the Mark II V8 cars, the Mustang-bodied Mark cars that we've often seen running in the Bathurst 12 Hour. We had the Stillwell Family Racing Mustang, and of course we're looking forward to our second round, which will be part of the VMRC promoted by the Benalla Auto Club, which is the 29th and 30th of April, 1 week after the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championship event on the 22nd and 23rd of April.
Which is also at Winton as well.
It is, but I'll have to swap hats for that. So coming up on the 22nd and 23rd of April will be round 2 of the 888 Home Loans Victorian State Race Series. And of course, at that event, we'll have a wider array of categories: improved production, sports sedans, and of course, some of the great Hyundai Excel and Formula Ford racing that we've come to expect.
Well, as I said, there's lots coming up, and as you can see behind us, we've got some shots from Christian Schmidt from the Phillip Island Historic Classic. Now, next week, that's going to be our focus on a special edition of In Pit Lane on Channel 31 in the usual time slot, 9 o'clock on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. It's become sort of our traditional post-Easter event. The Phillip Island Historic Classic coming up next week on In Pit Lane. But I hope you've enjoyed this special edition tonight. We had the studio booked, and we said, well, let's use it. We don't want to sort of let this fabulous facility go to waste. So I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I hope you've learned something from the motor events racing people. And if you're interested, by all means, get in contact with them. Let them know that you saw them on In Pit Lane. Dave, thank you for coming in and jumping in and taking over playing the very difficult role of Doc.
Well, I know that I'm a poor substitute for your regular guest, but always happy to step in and help. Just like we'd find in budget endurance racing, we adapt, we improvise, and we overcome.
And we're going to overcome the limitations of not having a band in this week by going back and having a look at one of our bands from, I think it was sometime last year. The band's name was Fennec, and I don't know I'd tell you where they were playing, but I looked online and I couldn't find, so they might not even exist anymore. But they existed when they came in here, and they were bloody good. So to take us out tonight, this is Fennec. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week. Remember, Thursday night at the earlier time again of 8:30 full course yellow. If Dave's available, he'll be there. P2, our floor manager, he'll be there as well. Who knows, I might even be there as well if I'm sober enough. We'll find out next Thursday night. But until we see you on Channel 31 in a week's time, from all of us here at In Pit Lane, thanks for joining us. And now, to take us out, here's Fenwick.
Covered in sheer and darkness, my mind blinded by a blanket on my head, as black as the night, which once infested it. Why do their passions are black? I feel a sense I believe for what is now. The future can only be bright for the life they light. Close to dawn, things start to move, things start to live. The sun about to glare down upon my restless face. One hour at a time, I'll be awake again.